The hand closed around Olivia Reyes's throat and lifted her onto her toes, and the whole restaurant heard the words come out of Marcus Deal's mouth like a promise. "You're dead." 40 people. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then a chair scraped back in the corner. One man, 52 cents of change still on his table, coffee going cold, and a quiet voice said 4 words that would end a criminal empire. Let her go. What nobody in that restaurant knew, not Olivia, not Marcus, not even the man himself, was that the person Marcus Deal had just threatened wasn't the girl. Before we go further, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. And if you believe one ordinary man can still change everything, subscribe. You're going to want to see how this ends. The bell over the door of Reyes' family kitchen rang at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning, and Hector Reyes didn't even look up, because that bell rang 200 times a day, and it had never once brought him anything worse than a bad tipper. Ethan Carter looked up. He always looked up. 12 years in the service had wired something into him that never unwired itself, and even now, 6 years out, sitting in a corner booth with a coffee and a folded newspaper, he wasn't actually reading. His eyes went to the door, the way a compass goes north. 3 men came in. The first thing Ethan noticed wasn't their size, it was their hands. 2 of them had their hands loose and low and empty. That was training. Somebody had taught them that. The second thing he noticed was that the restaurant got quiet. Not all at once. It went in a wave from the front tables back like somebody was turning down a dial. A fork stopped halfway to a mouth. A woman in a booth by the window reached over and quietly put her hand on her son's arm. An old man at the counter, flannel shirt, VFW cap. The kind of man who'd been coming to this place since it opened, set his cup down and stared straight ahead at nothing. Ethan had seen a room do that before. Not in this country. "Hector," the man in front called out. Big smile. Arms wide like he was walking into his own birthday party. "Hector Reyes." "There he is. There's my guy." Hector Reyes was 61 years old. He'd owned this restaurant for 22 years. He'd raised 2 kids in the apartment above it. And Ethan watched a 61-year-old man's shoulders come up around his ears like a boy waiting to be hit. "Marcus," Hector said. "Good morning." "It is a good morning." Marcus Deal leaned on the counter. He was maybe 35, gym-built, wearing a jacket too nice for the neighborhood. "It's a beautiful morning. You know what makes it beautiful, Marcus. It's the 15th. The word landed in the room like a dropped plate. Ethan set his coffee down. "I know what day it is," Hector said. "Then we're already halfway there." Marcus turned around, spread his arms, addressed the whole dining room like a host. "Folks, keep eating. Seriously. Eggs are getting cold. This is just business." Nobody ate. Behind Marcus, the 2 enforcers had drifted apart, one toward the door, one toward the hallway that led to the kitchen. Ethan watched that and felt something old and unwelcome turn over in his chest. That wasn't muscle standing around looking mean. That was containment. Somebody had taught them that too. "Marcus, listen to me." Hector's voice dropped. "Business is down. You know it's down. The whole block is down. Reuben closed. The flower shop closed." Reuben had attitude problems. "I have $3,100 in the account and payroll is Friday. Hector." Marcus put a hand on the old man's shoulder, and it looked almost gentle, and that was the worst part. Hector, don't do the numbers thing. Everybody does the numbers thing. You know how many times I hear the numbers thing? I'm not doing a thing, I'm telling you. 1,500, same as always. Same as last month, same as next month. It's not personal, it's not negotiable, and I have 4 more stops before lunch." Ethan's hand had gone flat on the table. He noticed it. He made it relax. "Not your business," he told himself. "You've got a kid. Not your business." He'd told himself that a lot in the last 6 years. Usually it worked. Then the swinging door from the kitchen came open, and Olivia Reyes walked out drying her hands on a towel, and Ethan watched Hector Reyes' face fall apart. "Mija, go in the back." She didn't go in the back. She was 26 years old, and about 5'4", and she looked at her father, and she looked at Marcus Deal's hand on her father's shoulder, and something in her jaw said in a way Ethan recognized instantly, because he'd seen it in 19-year-olds who'd just decided they were done being scared and hadn't thought past that. "Take your hand off him," she said. The room went so quiet, Ethan could hear the fryer ticking. Marcus laughed. He actually laughed delighted. Oh, no. Hector, is this her? This is the daughter, the one with the degree. Olivia, go in the back. I said take your hand off my father." Marcus took his hand off Hector's shoulder, slowly, making a show of it. He held both palms up. "Done," he said. "See, reasonable. I'm the most reasonable man on this block, ask anybody." He turned to face her fully. "Now let's talk about the $1,500. There isn't any $1,500. Olivia?" Hector grabbed her arm. She pulled free of him. And this was the moment Ethan would think about later, for years. Not the violence. This. A 26-year-old woman pulling her arm out of her father's hand because she'd finally had enough in a room full of 40 adults who had all decided individually and silently that this was not their problem. "There isn't any," Olivia said again. "There isn't going to be any. Not this month, not next month. We're done." Marcus nodded, thoughtful. Okay. And what does done mean exactly? Walk me through it. Because I want to make sure I understand the plan. It means, get out of my father's restaurant. That's not a plan, honey, that's a sentence. Get out. Because here's my concern. Marcus took a step toward her. My concern is you went away to school and you came back and you've got a lot of ideas about how the world works, and your dad, who is a good man. Hector, you're a good man. Your dad never explained the actual arrangement to you, so you think this is a choice. Another step. It's not a choice. It's weather. You don't argue with weather. You just decide if you're going to get wet. I'm calling the police. And Marcus Deal smiled. That was when Ethan knew. Not before. Right then. Because a man about to get arrested doesn't smile like that. A man with somebody's badge number in his phone smiles like that. Call him, Marcus said softly. Please, call him right now. Ask for Sergeant Vance. Tell him Marcus says hey. Olivia's hand stopped halfway to her apron pocket. Ethan watched her face change. Watch the floor go out from under a 26-year-old kid in real time, that specific look when a person realizes the door they've been running toward their whole life is painted on the wall. Yeah, Marcus said. Yeah, now you're getting it. Marcus, please. Hector's voice cracked. Please, I'll get it. Friday. I'll get it Friday, I swear to God. See, now it's not about the money. Marcus, it's not about the money anymore, Hector. And the smile was gone, and the volume came up, and 40 people flinched at once. It's about the fact that your daughter just told me no in front of a room full of people who are going to go home and tell everybody they know that somebody told Marcus Deal no and walked out of here. You understand what that costs me? Do you understand what that costs me on this block? She didn't mean. She meant it. She meant every word. He turned back to Olivia, and his voice went quiet again, which was worse. Didn't you? Yes. Say it again then. Olivia, don't. No, she said, and Marcus Deal's hand went around her throat. It happened fast. Faster than it should have, faster than a normal man's hand moves, and he didn't just grab her. He lifted and her heels came up off the tile, and her hands went to his wrist, and there was a sound out of her that wasn't a scream. Just air. Hector lunged. The enforcer by the hallway put a hand in the middle of his chest, almost casually, and a 61-year-old man bounced off it and went down on one knee. You're dead? Marcus said into her face. You hear me? You're already dead. You just don't know the date yet. 40 people. The old man in the VFW cap was gripping the counter with both hands and staring at the sugar caddy. The woman by the window had pulled her son's face into her shoulder. A guy in a suit was very slowly, very carefully sliding out of his booth toward the door. Somebody's phone was buzzing on a table and nobody was answering it, and a single father in the corner booth had already done the math. Two enforcers, one at the door, one at the hallway. Door's got his weight on his back foot. He's a runner, not a fighter. Hallway's the problem. Hallway's carrying something on his right hip, and he keeps touching it. Marcus has one hand occupied, both hands empty otherwise. He's not the danger. He's never been the danger. He's the mouth. 9 steps. My daughter's second period math class starts in 4 minutes. Not my business. Not my... Olivia's eyes had started to lose focus. The chair scraped back. It wasn't loud. In any other room on any other morning, nobody would have heard it. But this room was holding its breath, and so the sound of a chair leg dragging 6 inches across old tile went through Reyes' family kitchen like a gunshot. Every head turned. Ethan Carter stood up. He didn't square his shoulders. He didn't roll his neck. He picked up his napkin, folded it once, and set it beside his cup. And if you'd asked any of the 40 people in that room to describe him 30 seconds earlier, not one of them could have. That was generally speaking the point. "Let her go," he said. Marcus turned his head. He didn't let go. "Buddy," he said, "sit down. She can't breathe." "That's kind of the idea." "I know," Ethan said. "That's why I'm asking." There was something in the way he said it, flat, patient, almost polite, like a man asking a neighbor to move a car, that made the enforcer by the hallway take his hand off his hip and put it back on again. Marcus looked at him properly now. Took him in. 40-ish. Gray coming in at the temples. Canvas jacket work boots, hands that had done things but weren't doing them now. A dad. Just a dad who'd dropped a kid off somewhere and stopped for coffee. Marcus grinned. "Oh, this is great," he said, and finally opened his hand. Olivia dropped. She caught the edge of the counter and went down to her knees, pulling air in huge, wounded gasps, and Hector crawled to her and got his arms around her, and Ethan noted both of those things without ever taking his eyes off Marcus Deal. "Are you the hero?" Marcus asked. He walked out from behind the counter. "Is that what's happening? Because I've been doing this 4 years, and I've been waiting for the hero. I have genuinely been waiting. Ricky, is this the hero?" The enforcer by the door said, "Looks like a soccer dad, boss." It does. It does look like a soccer dad." Marcus stopped 6 feet away. Close enough. He had 4 inches and 40 pounds on Ethan, and he made sure everybody in the room saw him notice it. "What's your name, hero?" "Doesn't matter." "It matters to me. I'm making a list." "I know you are," Ethan said. "That's the other reason I'd like you to leave." Marcus's grin flickered just for a quarter second, because that answer had come from somewhere he didn't expect. There'd been no fear in it. Not the brave kind of no fear where a man's voice shakes and he pushes through anyway. The other kind. The kind that just isn't there. "You know who I am," Marcus said. "No." "Then you're about to have a real bad morning." "Probably." Ethan agreed. "But she's breathing, and you're over here, so right now I'm ahead." Somebody in the restaurant made a sound. It might have been a laugh strangled halfway. Marcus's head snapped toward it, and the sound stopped. "Sir." That was Olivia, ragged her hand at her throat. "Sir, please. Please don't. It's not, you don't understand what they..." "Ma'am," Ethan said without turning around. "How many are outside?" She blinked at him. "What? In the car? How many?" And that was when Marcus Deal stopped smiling, because that was not a question a soccer dad knows to ask. "One," Olivia said. "There's always one that stays with the car. Thank you." Ethan's eyes hadn't moved off Marcus. "Sir, I'm gonna say this once and then I'm gonna stop talking because I've got to be at a school at 3 o'clock and I'd like to be there. Take your 2 guys, get in your car and go. Nobody here is going to say anything to anybody. Nobody's got a phone up. Nobody wants trouble." A beat. "You walk out that door right now, this never happened." Marcus stared at him. Later, much later, in a federal courtroom, under oath, a man named Ricky Ordonez would be asked what he was thinking at that exact moment. And Ricky would say on the record, "I was thinking we should took the deal." "Ricky," Marcus said. "Tommy." The 2 enforcers came off the walls. What happened next took 4 seconds. Ethan would not remember most of it, which was normal. The body remembers what the mind lets go. But 40 people watched it, and 3 of them had their phones out by the end, and the 14-second video that a line cook named Dante Willis shot from the kitchen doorway would be watched 11 million times before the year was out. Tommy the hallway one. The one with the thing on his hip got there first because he was closer, and because he was faster, and because he'd never once in his life had somebody wait for him on purpose. Ethan waited for him on purpose. He didn't move back. He moved in inside the swing, close enough that the punch went around behind his head and his left hand caught Tommy's right wrist. The hip hand, always the hip hand, and turned it in a direction. Wrists don't turn. Tommy made a high, thin noise. Ethan took the weight, pivoted, and put him face first over an empty table, and the thing came off Tommy's hip and hit the floor and skidded, and it was a collapsible baton, and Ethan kicked it under the booth without looking at it. Ricky got 2 steps. Ethan met him with a forearm across the collarbone that stood him straight up like a man remembering the national anthem, hooked his ankle, and put him down flat on his back on the tile. Not hard. That was the strangest part. The part people kept talking about afterward. It wasn't hard. He set the man down the way you'd set down a bag of groceries you didn't want to burst. Then he stepped back. Both hands open. Breathing normal. 4 seconds. Tommy was on his knees holding his wrist. Ricky was staring at the ceiling trying to figure out where his air went. And Marcus Deal had not moved 1 inch because Marcus Deal had just watched something he did not have a category for. The silence in that restaurant was the loudest thing Ethan had heard in 6 years. "Sir," he said, "your car's outside." Marcus's mouth worked. Nothing came out. "Marcus?" Ethan used the name for the first time and used it quietly, and somehow that was the most frightening thing he'd said yet. "Your car is outside." And here is what 40 people in Reyes family kitchen learned in that moment, and what they would each carry home and turn over in their hands like a stone in a pocket for the rest of their lives. Marcus Deal was scared. Not of the fight. He had been in fights. He was scared because for 4 years every single room he'd walked into had bent, and this one hadn't, and he had absolutely no idea what to do about it, and everybody could see it on his face. Everybody, the old man in the VFW cap, and the mother by the window, and the guy in the suit halfway out the door, and Hector Reyes on the floor with his arms around his daughter. They saw it. That was the thing Marcus Deal could never take back. That was the thing that killed him 4 seasons, and a federal indictment later. Not the arrest. They saw it. "Ricky," Marcus said. His voice had gone thin. "Get up. Get up, Tommy. Move." They moved. Tommy went out cradling his arm against his chest and couldn't look at anybody. Ricky went out sideways, half-crouched, backing the whole way, because he'd decided he wasn't going to turn his back on the soccer dad, and he didn't care who knew it. At the door, Marcus stopped. He turned around, and he found Ethan Carter's eyes across 40 feet of frozen restaurant, and he pointed one finger steady. Now he'd gotten it steady, and he said it loud enough for every person in that building to hear, "This isn't over." Ethan said nothing. "You hear me? You're already dead. You and everybody in this room, every single one of you." He swung the finger around the dining room, and grown men looked at their plates. "You think this changes something? Nothing changed. Nothing changed today. I'll see you all on the 15th. And then softer back to Ethan. "And this is the part Dante Willis's phone caught, the part that would run on every local news station in the state. I'm gonna find out who you are, hero. I got all day." The bell over the door rang. They were gone. For 4 full seconds, nobody in Reyes family kitchen moved. Then the old man in the VFW cap started very slowly to clap and stopped because nobody joined him, and because his hands were shaking too badly to do it right anyway. Ethan crossed to Olivia and crouched down. "Ma'am, look at me. Look right here." He held up 2 fingers. "Follow these. Good. Does it hurt to swallow?" Yes, a little." "Voice, sound different to you." "I don't maybe. That's normal. That'll pass in a day." He glanced at the marks coming up on her neck, and his jaw did something once, and then it stopped. "You're gonna want ice on that for 20 minutes on 20 off, and you're gonna want a doctor to look at it today, not tomorrow. Not because I think it's bad, Because there's gonna be a photograph. Olivia stared at him. A photograph. Dated. Time-stamped. From a doctor. Ethan stood up. Trust me, Hector was crying. Just standing there in his own restaurant, 61 years old, hands hanging at his sides, tears going down into his mustache, and he grabbed Ethan's hand in both of his. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. God bless you, thank you. Sir, you don't know what you did. You don't know what you... Mr. Reyes. Ethan gently got his hand back. Sir, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth, and then I'm going to leave, and you're never going to see me again. Okay. Hector nodded, wiping his face. How long? Since he came, since Marcus. Yes. 11 months. Hector's voice broke on it. 11 months. 1,500 the 15th of every month. $16,500. Ethan absorbed that. He didn't react to it. He was very good at not reacting to things. And how many others on this block? Everybody, Hector whispered. Everybody, my friend. The barber, the dry cleaner, the little grocery, the nail place on the corner. Reuben tried to fight it. Reuben went to the police. He filed a report. A real report with a case number. The old man's hands came up empty, helpless. And 8 days later, his van burned in his own driveway, and his insurance said arson, and nobody ever came. Nobody ever came, and Reuben's in Arizona now, and his shop's been empty 2 years. He filed a report, with his name on it, everything. And nobody came. Nobody ever comes. Hector laughed, and it was an awful sound. You want to know the joke? You want to know the funny part? 2 months ago, I'm paying Marcus at the back door, and a patrol car comes down the alley. Slow, real slow. And the officer looks right at us, money in my hand. He looked up, and he waves. Ethan went very still. Sergeant Vance, he said. Hector's face drained. How do you... Because your daughter said she was going to call the police, Ethan said, and Marcus told her to ask for him by name, and then he smiled. He picked up his jacket off the booth. Men don't smile like that unless they own something, Mr. Reyes. And Ethan Carter walked out of Reyes' family kitchen at 9:31 in the morning and got in his truck and put both hands on the wheel and sat there in the parking lot for a long time without starting it. He had an 11-year-old daughter named Maddie who needed picking up at 3 o'clock. He had a mortgage he was 2 payments ahead on. He had a job installing security systems for a man who liked him and paid him fairly, and he had a quiet life he had built out of nothing on purpose over 6 hard years, specifically and deliberately, so that he would never again be the man who stood up in a room. He had a rule, one rule, not my business. He'd made it standing at a grave in 2019, and he had never once broken it. Ethan looked at his own hands on the steering wheel. Then he looked up through the windshield at the restaurant at Hector Reyes, moving between tables with a coffee pot. He wasn't pouring at 40 people slowly starting to talk again at a 26-year-old woman standing behind the register with a bag of ice against her throat and her chin up, absolutely refusing to cry where her father could see her. Across the street, a gray sedan sat at the curb with its engine running. There was a man in the driver's seat. He had a phone up, and he was taking a picture of Ethan Carter's license plate. The man in the gray sedan didn't drive away when Ethan looked at him. That was the first thing. A man taking a picture he isn't supposed to take drops the phone and pulls out. This one lowered the phone, made eye contact through 2 windshields and 40 feet of asphalt, and lifted his chin the way you do at somebody you already know. Then he drove away at exactly the speed limit. Ethan sat there another 90 seconds and did something he hadn't done since 2019. He ran a threat assessment on his own life. 9:41 in this morning. He had a daughter in a building 4 miles east with 2 exits and a receptionist who buzzed anybody in who smiled. He had a house with a front door he'd never upgraded because upgrading it would have meant admitting he still thought about doors. He had a truck with a plate number that was now, as of about 40 seconds ago, sitting in a stranger's phone. He started the engine. And then he did not drive to the school, and he did not drive home. He drove to a hardware store on Delancey and spent $86 on 2 motion sensor floodlights, a door reinforcement kit, and a package of 3-inch screws. And when the kid at the register asked him if he was doing a project, Ethan said, "Yeah, little project." And the kid said, "Right on." And that was the entire conversation, and Ethan carried it out to the truck feeling like a liar. He was home by 10:15. He had the first floodlight mounted by 10:40. He was up on the ladder with a screw in his teeth when his phone went off in his back pocket, and he almost let it go, and then didn't. Carter. "Mr. Carter. This is Olivia Reyes." A pause. Her voice was rough, sanded down at the edges. "From the restaurant." Ethan came down off the ladder. "How's your throat?" How did you get... my dad had your credit card slip. From your coffee. He looked you up. I'm sorry, that's incredibly... How's your throat, Ms. Reyes?" "It's purple," she said. "Did you see a doctor?" "I'm sitting in the parking lot of an urgent care right now, because you told me to." A shaky breath came down the line. "Because a total stranger told me to, and I've been sitting here for 20 minutes, and I can't make myself go in because if I go in there's a record, and if there's a record, then it's real, and my dad..." She stopped. "Sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know why I called you." "Yes, you do." Silence. "Go inside," Ethan said. "Tell them exactly what happened. Use his name. Say it out loud in that room where a nurse can write it down. And when they ask if you want to file a police report..." They already asked. "What did you say?" "I said no." Ethan closed his eyes. Out on the street a car went by and he tracked it without meaning to the way you track everything once you start. "That was the right answer," he said. "What?" "You heard me. You're the one you stood up in a restaurant. You're the only person in this entire city who..." "Ms. Reyes." He kept his voice level. "If you file a report today, a copy of it lands on a desk in the 4th District within about 6 hours. If your dad's telling the truth about Sergeant Vance, then Marcus Deal knows what's in it before your ice pack melts. And then it's not a police report. It's a shopping list." He heard her breathing. "Go inside," he said. "Get the pictures dated. Then put them somewhere that isn't your house and isn't your restaurant and isn't your phone, and then go back to work and be as boring as you have ever been in your life." "And then what?" "Then nothing." "Mr. Carter." "That's the whole plan, ma'am. Then nothing. Nothing is the plan." He looked at the floodlight half-mounted hanging crooked over his own front door. "I'm sorry. I've got a daughter." "So does my father," Olivia said, and she hung up on him. Ethan stood in his own driveway with the phone in his hand for a good 30 seconds. Then he went back up the ladder and he mounted the second floodlight, and he told himself he was done. He was not done. He knew it standing on the ladder. The body knows. Before the mouth admits it, his hands were steady, but his jaw was locked, and he'd been chewing the same thought for an hour. The way a dog works a bone, and the thought was this: 11 months, $16,500, and a patrol car that waved. Nobody waves unless they're sure. Nobody's sure unless somebody made them sure. At 2:55 that afternoon, he was parked outside Lincoln Middle School 20 minutes early, which was not unusual, and he was parked with the truck facing out toward the road instead of nose, in which was. Maddie came out at 3:06 with her backpack on one shoulder and her whole face already talking. "Okay, okay. Priya's mom said Priya can come over Saturday, but only if there's an adult, and I said there's an adult, and she said, 'Which adult?' And I said, 'My dad.' And she said, and I quote, 'Is he the one who fixed our garage door?' And I said yes, and she said, 'Okay.'" Maddie threw the backpack in and climbed up. "So you fixing that garage door has now gotten me a friend. You're welcome for my social life. Seatbelt. It's on." It wasn't. She put it on. "Why are you parked weird?" Ethan pulled out. "I'm not parked weird." "You're parked backwards." "It's called backing in. Everybody does it." "You have never once done it in your life," Maddie said, and put her feet on the dashboard, and Ethan reached over and pushed them off, and she put them back, and he let her. They were 8 blocks from home when she said, "Dad, why's your hand doing that?" He looked down. His right hand was flexing on the wheel open, closed open, and the two middle knuckles were swollen up the size of marbles. "Hit it on a ladder." "Okay," Maddie said. But she said it in the flat, pleasant, complete way an 11-year-old says it when she has just filed something away for later, and Ethan drove the last 8 blocks, knowing that his daughter, who had lost her mother at 5, who had spent 2 years asking him questions he couldn't answer in a voice she thought was casual, had just added a data point to a file she'd been keeping on him since she was old enough to keep files. That was Tuesday. Wednesday, nothing happened. That was the part that got him. Wednesday, absolutely nothing happened. He installed a keypad system at a dentist's office in Ridgefield. He ate a sandwich in his truck. He picked up Maddie. He made spaghetti. He checked the locks twice instead of once, and then hated himself for checking twice, and then checked a third time out of spite. Thursday morning at 6:50, he opened his front door to get the paper, and there was a bouquet of flowers on his step. Ethan stood there in the doorway in bare feet. They were nice flowers. Grocery store, but the good kind, the $20 kind, wrapped in cellophane with a little water tube on the stems. There was a card. It was a sympathy card. It was a sympathy card, the kind with the dove on it, and inside it, somebody had written in ballpoint, in careful block capitals, "Sorry for your loss." That was all. No name. Ethan did not touch it. He stood there and made himself look at the whole picture, the flowers, the card, the step, the street. Somebody had come up his walk in the dark. Somebody had stood 4 feet from where his daughter slept and taken the time to write neatly. Dad, Maddie behind him in pajamas, cereal bowl in her hands. Who died? Ethan turned around so fast, she stepped back. "Nobody," he said. "Nobody died. Go eat your cereal." "Dad, those are funeral flowers. Why are there—" "Madeline? Kitchen. Now." She went. She went, and she was hurt, and he heard the bowl come down on the counter harder than it needed to, and he stood in his doorway and felt something come up in his chest that he had not felt in 6 years, and had promised a woman at a grave he would never feel again. He picked up the flowers. He carried them to the trash can at the curb. He dropped them in. Then he took the card out of the trash, put it in a Ziploc bag from the kitchen drawer, and wrote the date on the bag with a Sharpie. That was 6:58 a.m. on Thursday. And Ethan Carter would say later under oath that 6:58 a.m. on Thursday was the exact minute he stopped being a bystander, and he did not know it yet. And if you'd asked him at 6:59, he'd have told you he was still out. Because here's the thing about a man like that. He doesn't decide. He accumulates. Thursday afternoon, he drove past Rhea's family kitchen. He didn't stop. He told himself he was going to the hardware store, which was in the opposite direction. Friday, he did it again. Saturday morning at 9, Priya's mom dropped Priya off, and Ethan made pancakes, and 2 11-year-olds screamed at a video game in his living room for 4 hours, and it was the best morning he'd had in a month. And at 1:15, the doorbell rang. Ethan checked the window first. It was Olivia Reyes. He stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind him. "You can't be here." "I know." "No, ma'am, listen to me. There is a car that took my plate. If they're watching my house and you walk up to my door, you've just told them the 2 things I need them not to know, which is that I care and that you and I are talking. You have to leave, right now." "They're not watching your house," Olivia said. "They're watching the restaurant. 2 guys all day, every day, in a booth by the window, ordering coffee and not paying for it. Since Wednesday." Her chin came up. Those marks on her neck had gone from purple to a bad yellow-green. "So I parked 6 blocks away, and I walked, in a hood, like a criminal, in my own city." Ethan let out a breath. "That's not bad," he admitted. "Don't do that. Don't grade me." She held out a folded piece of paper. "Take it." "No." "Take it." "Ms. Reyes." "His name is Ruben Alvarez," Olivia said, and her voice cracked right down the middle. "He had a landscaping business. He had it for 19 years. He filed a police report on May 9, 2023, case number 23-14877, and I have it because I went to the county records office on Wednesday, like a normal citizen, and paid $4.80, and they gave it to me. They just gave it to me. It's a public record, and there's a name on it. The responding officer's name. Ethan didn't take the paper. "Don't say it out loud," he said. "Why not?" "Because right now you've got a $4.80 piece of paper and a bad feeling. If you say that name out loud on my porch, you've got a conspiracy and it's got 2 people in it, and one of them has an 11-year-old inside playing Mario Kart." Olivia looked at him. Really looked at him at the man in the doorway, in a t-shirt with pancake batter on it, with 2 little girls shrieking through the window behind him. "You already know the name," she said quietly. "Yeah. You've already. Ms. Reyes, go home." "How long have you known?" "Since Tuesday, 9:28 in the morning." Ethan's voice didn't change at all. "About 4 seconds after your dad told me a patrol car waved, something went out of Olivia's shoulders. She pressed the heel of her hand against her eye hard and stood there in his driveway on a Saturday afternoon and did not cry, and Ethan watched her not cry with a growing and extremely unwelcome sense of recognition. "They came back Wednesday," she said. Ethan went still. "Not Marcus. 2 new ones I've never seen. They sat in booth 4 for 6 hours and they didn't say one word to anybody. And Thursday they came back and did it again. And Friday my dad—" Her jaw worked. "Friday my dad went and got $1,500 out of the safe and he set it on the table in front of them. Friday, Mr. Carter, not the 15th, Friday. He begged them to take it and they wouldn't touch it. They just looked at it. And then one of them said, 'That's not what this is about anymore.' And they got up and they left the money sitting there." Ethan closed his eyes. "They left it," she said. "They left $1,500 sitting on a table in a restaurant." "Who does that? What does that mean?" "It means it's not a business anymore," Ethan said. "It means it's a message, and the message is for the whole block, not for you." "Which means what?" "Which means somebody's going to burn," Ethan said, "and they want everybody to watch." The video game noise cut out inside the house. Somebody had won. Somebody was gloating. Olivia put the folded paper on his porch rail. "His name is Sergeant Daniel Vance," she said. "Badge 4471, 22 years on the job. He was the responding officer on Ruben's arson complaint. He was the responding officer on the flower shop break-in. And he was the responding officer on a vandalism call at the barber shop in January." She was shaking now all the way through, but her voice was flat and clear, and she got every word out. 3 reports. 3 different businesses. Same officer. All 3 closed as unfounded within 72 hours. "I found it in a public records office, Mr. Carter, in an afternoon, for $4.80. She turned to go, then stopped. "You know what makes me sick," she said. "Anybody could have found that. Anybody. For 11 months all somebody had to do was look." And she walked down his driveway and away down the sidewalk with her hood up in her own city on a Saturday. Ethan stood on his porch for a long time. Then he picked up the paper. Sunday at 4 in the afternoon. Ethan Carter walked into Delgado's barbershop on 5th for the first time in his life and asked for a haircut he didn't need. Ray Delgado was 71 years old and had cut hair in that chair since Nixon. He put the cape on Ethan and started in with the clippers and talked about the Steelers for 11 minutes without stopping, and Ethan let him, and then in a gap Ethan said without any change in his voice at all, "January." The clippers stopped. In the mirror, Ethan watched the old man's face. "You had a window come in," Ethan said. 2 in the morning. Cop came out, took a report, closed it in 3 days. Unfounded. Ray Delgado's hands started moving again. Very carefully. "You a cop?" "No, sir." "Insurance?" "No, sir." "Then who the hell are you?" "I'm the guy from the restaurant," Ethan said. The clippers stopped again. And in the mirror, Ethan watched a 71-year-old man's eyes fill up so fast it was like somebody turned a tap. "You're him," Ray said. "Yes, sir. You're the one Dante's video. My grandson showed me the video everybody's seen." Ray's voice went to pieces. He set the clippers down on the counter because his hands weren't working right. Son, I gotta tell you something, and I need you to hear it right. Half this block thinks you're a hero. He wiped his face with the back of his wrist. And the other half thinks you just got us all killed. Which half are you? Both, Ray Delgado said. God help me both. Ethan sat in the chair with the cape on and half a haircut and waited. They didn't break my window, Ray said finally. That's the part nobody see. They didn't break it. Marcus came in the day before, and he stood right there right where you walked in, and he said, Ray, that's a beautiful window. That's all he said. That's all he said. And I laughed because what am I gonna do? And I said thank you. And that night at 2 in the morning it came in. He picked the clippers back up and put them down again. And when I called and the officer came out and I told him what Marcus said about the window, you know what he wrote down. Nothing, Ethan said. He wrote down nothing. Ray's voice went up, cracked, came back down. He stood in my shop with his little notebook, and he did not write it down. And then he said, and I've thought about this every single night for 6 months, he said, Mr. Delgado, are you sure you want to make a statement about that? Ethan sat very still. Are you sure you want to? Ray laughed, and it was that same awful laugh Hector Reyes had. 22 years I've been paying that man's salary out my taxes, and he stood in my shop and asked me was I sure. Sergeant Vance. Ray Delgado's whole body went rigid. Don't, he said. Mr. Delgado, you don't say that name in here. The old man's eyes went to the window, to the door again. You don't say that name anywhere, son, you understand me. I got a wife with a bad heart. I got a mortgage on this building I'll be paying till I'm 80. You want to know why nobody talks? That's why. That's the whole reason. It's not that we're cowards. His voice broke wide open. It's that we did talk. We did. Every one of us tried one time at the beginning. And then we found out who was listening. The shop was quiet. Out on 5th, a bus went by. Ray, Ethan said. How many of you tried silence? How many? All of us, Ray Delgado whispered. Every single one. And that was the moment, not the restaurant, not the flowers. Right there in a barber's chair on a Sunday afternoon with a cape around his neck. Ethan Carter felt the whole thing turn over in his head and land facing a different direction. Because 11 months of extortion is a crime. But 11 months of extortion where every victim already reported it and every report vanished isn't a crime. It's a system. Somebody built that. Somebody maintained it. Somebody had been maintaining it for years. Marcus Deal wasn't the top of anything. Marcus Deal was an employee. Mr. Delgado, Ethan said. Do you still have your copy of the report? Why? Because you paid $4.80 for it, Ethan said. And it's got a case number on it, and a case number means it exists in a computer somewhere. And things that exist in computers are very, very hard to unexist. Even for a sergeant. Ray Delgado stared at him in the mirror. You're not really here for a haircut, he said. No, sir. You gonna get me killed? Probably not, Ethan said. And Ray Delgado laughed, a real one this time, wet and shocked and disbelieving, and said, well, that's the most honest thing anybody said to me in 6 months, and reached into the drawer under the register and pulled out a manila envelope that had been sitting there since January. Ethan walked out of that barber shop at 5:15 with the worst haircut of his adult life and a photocopy of case number 24-00312. By Wednesday, he had 4. He never asked anybody for anything. That was the trick, and he'd learned it a long time ago in places he didn't talk about. You don't ask frightened people for help. You ask them for nothing, and you let them watch you not need them. And then you tell them one true thing about themselves, and you leave. He got his shirts pressed at Kim's dry cleaning, and mentioned in passing that his own father had run a shop and had never once in his life been able to close on a Sunday. Mrs. Kim went in the back and cried for 6 minutes and came out with a shoebox. He bought groceries at Vandermeer's Market 3 times in a week, and on the 3rd time, Gus Vandermeer, 68 hands like catcher's mitts, hadn't spoken above a mumble in a year, followed him out to the parking lot and said, "That video, was that real?" And Ethan said, "Yes, sir." And Gus Vandermeer stood in his own parking lot next to a cart corral and said, "Then I want in whatever it is," and started crying so hard he had to put his hand on the truck. 4 of them. 4 boxes. 4 11-month paper trails from 4 terrified people who had each been absolutely certain they were the only ones still keeping receipts. They weren't. Every single one of them had kept receipts. That was the thing that undid Ethan more than anything else in the whole business. Not the fear, not the flowers, not Olivia's throat. It was that 4 separate broken people alone in the dark had each quietly written it all down for 11 months, on the private, hopeless, stubborn chance that someday somebody would ask. And nobody had ever asked. Ethan spread it all on his kitchen table at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night with the blinds down. Bank slips, cash withdrawal records, a barber's notebook with dates and amounts in a shaky hand going back to April. Mrs. Kim's shoebox, which turned out to contain 11 months of her own handwriting in Korean, dated initialed every single payment. It was a case. It was an actual, real federal case, sitting on a kitchen table in a house with a Mario Kart controller on the couch. And it was completely useless. Ethan knew that too, and he sat there until 1 in the morning knowing it. 4 scared civilians, and a shoebox don't beat a police sergeant. They don't even get you in the door. You take that to the county DA, and it lands on a desk, and the desk has a phone, and the phone calls somebody, and 8 days later, everybody's van burns. He needed somebody with jurisdiction over cops. He was still sitting there at 1:04 a.m. when his phone lit up on the table with a number he didn't know. He looked at it for 3 rings. Carter. Ethan Carter. A man's voice. Calm. Older. 38. 402 Brambleton. Silver F150 plate. Ending in 792. Daughters at Lincoln Middle. 6th grade. Gets out at 3:06. A pause. Ms. Cortez's homeroom, I think. The one with the sunflowers on the door. Ethan didn't move. Didn't breathe. "I want you to know I'm not threatening you," the voice said. "I want to be real clear about that. I'm not Marcus. Marcus is a mouth. Marcus is an idiot if you want the truth. And Marcus is the reason we're having this conversation at 1 in the morning instead of never." "Who is this?" "I'm the guy who's calling to tell you it's over," the man said. "It's done. You had your Tuesday. Everybody saw it. Congratulations, seriously, that video's got 11 million views. My sister-in-law sent it to me. She doesn't even know I know you." He actually chuckled. "Here's the deal. You stop. Today. You go back to installing keypads and picking up your kid at 3:06, and nobody ever knocks on your door, and in 6 months, this is a story you tell at a barbecue. That's it. That's the whole offer. It expires when I hang up." Ethan looked at the 4 boxes on his kitchen table. "And if I don't stop, then I'd feel real bad about it," the man said. "I would. Because you seem like a decent guy, and because I've got kids too, and because, Ethan, listen, this doesn't work the way you think it works. You think there's a bad guy. There's no bad guy. There's a system, and it's been running for 11 years, not 11 months, and you cannot arrest a system." His voice was almost kind. "You're not fighting a gang, son. You're fighting the way things are." 11 years, Ethan said. Silence on the line. Just a beat too long. And in that beat, Ethan Carter, who had been sitting alone at a kitchen table at 1 in the morning with 4 shoeboxes and no move, closed his eyes and felt something enormous shift underneath him because the man on the phone had just made the only mistake he was ever going to make. "That was a number you didn't mean to say," Ethan said. "I'm going to hang up now." "Sergeant Vance," Ethan said, "before you do." The call ended. Ethan set the phone down very gently on the table next to Mrs. Kim's shoebox and sat in his dark kitchen and started for the first time in 6 years to smile. Because 11 months was a case. 11 years was a federal one. He didn't sleep. He sat at that kitchen table until the sky went gray, and he did the only thing he knew how to do with a problem that big, which was take it apart into pieces small enough to carry. Piece 1. 11 years meant it started before Marcus Deal was old enough to rent a car. Piece 2. 11 years meant paper. Somewhere somebody's arson complaint from 2015 was closed unfounded by the same badge that closed Rubens in 2023, and paper doesn't get scared, and paper doesn't move to Arizona. Piece 3. And this was the one that kept him in the chair until dawn. The man on the phone had not called to threaten him. He'd called to negotiate. Nobody negotiates from strength. Nobody wakes up at 1 in the morning to offer a deal to a man installing keypads at a dentist's office, unless something on their end is already cracking. Which meant Ethan had scared him. Which meant Ethan had scared him before he did anything, which meant whatever was actually going on was so much more fragile than 11 years of untouchable made it look. At 6:12 that morning, Maddie came down for cereal and found her father sitting in front of 4 shoeboxes with his hands folded. "Whoa," she said. "Did you sleep?" "Some." "Dad." She stopped in the doorway with her hair sideways. "What is all this?" Ethan looked at his daughter, 11 years old, her mother's exact eyebrows. Sitting in a doorway in a house he had chosen for one reason, which was that nothing had ever happened here. "Homework," he said. "That's not homework, that's a crime board. That's like a show." "Eat your cereal, Mads." She ate her cereal. But she ate it standing up watching him over the bowl, and when he dropped her at Lincoln at 7:44, she didn't get out right away. "Dad?" "You're gonna be late." "You're doing the thing," Maddie said. "What thing?" "The thing where you're extra normal." She had her hand on the door. "You get super normal. You say more words than usual, and all of them are boring." She looked at him steady, and it took everything he had to hold that look. "You did it after Mom, too." Ethan's throat closed. "Go to school, baby." She went. And he sat in that pickup line with his hands on the wheel and let himself feel it for exactly 8 seconds, and then he shut it off. And then he drove to a gas station on Route 9 and used a payphone bolted to the wall outside because it was the only payphone he'd seen in 4 years, and because he had exactly one call to make, and he was not making it from his own number. Directory assistants had 4 Alvarezes in Yuma County. The second one picked up on the 4th ring. "Yeah, Mr. Ruben Alvarez." A long pause. "Who's this?" "My name's Ethan Carter. I'm calling from back east. I'm standing at a payphone." "A payphone." "Yes, sir." And Ethan heard 2,400 miles away, a man let out a breath he'd apparently been holding since 2023. "Oh," Ruben Alvarez said quietly. "Oh, you're the one? You're the guy in the video. You've seen the video." "Mr. My mother in Guadalajara has seen the video." Ruben laughed, and there was nothing funny in it at all. "You know what I did when I saw it? I threw up. I'm 49 years old, and I sat in my truck in a Home Depot parking lot. And I threw up because for 2 years I've been telling myself there was nothing anybody could have done, and then some guy in a canvas jacket stands up and does it in 4 seconds. "Mr. Alvarez." 19 years, Ruben said. His voice went to gravel. 19 years I built that. 19 years and my dad's name was on the truck. You know what they paid me for it? Nothing. Nobody bought it. There was nothing to buy. There was just a burned van and a phone that stopped ringing, and my wife asking me why we couldn't stay, and I couldn't tell her. Because how do you tell your wife the police are the problem? How do you say that out loud in a kitchen? You sound crazy. Ethan let it come. He'd learned that too. You let it come. "I need to ask you one question," he said. "Then I'm gone." "Ask it." "When your van burned, did anybody ever come talk to you who wasn't local?" The silence on that line went on so long, Ethan thought the connection had dropped. "Mr. Alvarez." "Yeah," Ruben said. Ethan's hand tightened on the receiver. "Yeah, somebody came," Ruben said. 2 months after. I was already packing the house. Woman knocked on my door, showed me a badge, said she was federal, sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours and asked me every single question nobody local ever asked. Every one. And I answered them all, and I cried like a kid. And at the end, she gave me a card and she said, "Mr. Alvarez, when you're ready." "What did you do?" "I put it in a drawer," Ruben said, "and I moved to Arizona." "Do you still have it?" Mister, it's 2 years. Do you still have it? Ethan heard a chair scrape, heard footsteps, heard a drawer come open 2,400 miles away, and a man rummaging, and then the rummaging stopped. And Ruben Alvarez said in a completely different voice, "It's right here." Ethan closed his eyes. "It's been right here," Ruben said. "The whole time. It's been in this drawer for 2 years under a tape measure, and I've opened this drawer probably 1,000 times, and I have never once—" He stopped. God, what did I do? What did I do? Mr. Alvarez, listen to me. You didn't do anything. I ran. You had a family, Ethan said, and no help and a badge on the wrong side. That's not running. That's arithmetic. He pulled a pen out of his jacket. Read me the card. Okafor, Ruben said. Donna Okafor, Special Agent, FBI Public Corruption Squad. Public corruption. Ethan wrote it on the back of his own hand at 8:31 in the morning at a payphone on Route 9, and something in his chest came loose that had been welded shut since 2019 because a public corruption squad doesn't investigate gangs. It investigates cops. Which meant that 2 years ago, before Marcus Deal ever put a hand on Olivia Reyes's throat, the federal government had already been looking at somebody in that building. They'd been looking for 2 years, and they'd gotten nowhere, because nobody would talk. Mr. Carter. Ruben's voice was wrecked. You gonna call her? Yes, sir. Then I'm coming. Mr. Alvarez. No, you listen. And there was something in it, some 19 years of your father's name on the truck thing that stood all the hair up on Ethan's arms. I got a 9-hour drive and a burned van and a case number and my dad's name on a truck that doesn't exist anymore. You call her. You tell her Ruben Alvarez is ready. Tell her it took me 2 years and a stranger in a canvas jacket, and tell her I'm sorry and tell her I'm coming. He didn't call from the payphone. He drove 40 minutes to a public library, sat at a terminal that 100 strangers a day used, and looked up the field office switchboard. And then he drove home and thought about it for 6 hours, because a switchboard is a phone system, and phone systems have logs, and logs have readers. At 3:06 he picked up Maddie. At 6:40 he made chicken. At 8:15 he checked her homework and got the math wrong, and she fixed it for him. At 9:30 he read on the couch while she watched something with a laugh track, and she fell asleep against his shoulder the way she hadn't since she was 7, and Ethan sat there under the weight of his own kid and understood exactly what he was about to spend. At 11:52 p.m. he went out to the garage and called the FBI from a phone he'd bought at a gas station with cash. Okafor. She answered on the second ring at midnight. That told him something too. Agent Okafor, my name's Ethan Carter. 2 years ago you sat at a kitchen table in this city with a man named Ruben Alvarez, and you gave him a card. Dead air. Then very carefully, where'd you get this number, sir? From the card. He kept it. He kept it. Under a tape measure, Ethan said. And Special Agent Dana Okafor, a woman he had never met, made a sound on the other end of that line, one short, sharp breath like somebody had hit her in the stomach with good news. Mr. Carter, she said. Are you the man from the restaurant? Yes, ma'am. Hang up, she said. Ma'am, hang up this phone, get in a vehicle that isn't yours, and be at the laundromat on 8th and Mercer at 6:15 tomorrow morning. Not the parking lot. Inside. Bring laundry. A pause. Real laundry, Mr. Carter. Dirty. If you walk in there with an empty basket, I'm leaving. She was already sitting there at 6:15 with a paperback and a dryer, going a black woman in her 40s in a hoodie and no makeup, and she didn't look up when Ethan sat down 2 chairs over with a basket of his daughter's laundry on his knees. Fold something, Okafor said. He folded something. You have any idea? She said, still reading, what you have done to my life this week. No, ma'am. 11 million views. She turned a page. 11 million people watched a private citizen do in 4 seconds what I have not been able to do in 26 months. My SAC watched it. My SAC's wife watched it. And then my SAC called me into his office and asked me, and I quote, Dana, is that our block? Me. She finally looked at him. Yes, that's our block. 26 months. 26 months. 400 hours of surveillance. 3 grand jury subpoenas, 1 financial analyst, and not one single human being willing to sit in a chair and say a name out loud. Her jaw flexed. You know what I've got? I've got a case that's dead. It's been dead for a year. They didn't kill it. It just starved. You have Marcus. I don't want Marcus. She said it flat. Mr. Carter, listen to me carefully because everybody gets this wrong and then they get disappointed. Marcus Deal is a collections agent. If I arrest Marcus Deal tomorrow, there's another Marcus by the 15th. There's always another Marcus. There's a line of Marcuses. Then who do you want? Okafor set the paperback down. I want whoever's been running it since 2015, she said. Ethan went very still. Yeah, she said, watching his face. You already knew. Somebody said a number to you they shouldn't have said, didn't they? 11 years. 11 years. She nodded slowly. So here's what I've got, and it's nothing. And I'm telling you anyway, because I have decided in the last 4 seconds to trust a man I met in a laundromat, which is a career decision I'll be explaining for the rest of my life. 22 closed complaints, 4 zip codes, 15 different responding officers over 11 years, 15, Mr. Carter. They rotate, they're not stupid. And every single one of those complaints goes unfounded inside 72 hours. Different cops, different years. Same result. That's not 15 crooked cops. No, it isn't. Okafor's voice dropped. 15 crooked cops is a movie. 15 crooked cops can't keep a secret through one Christmas party. What that is one person with a pen. The dryer thumped. Somebody with the authority to close cases, Ethan said. Somebody with the authority to close cases, assign responding officers, and route complaints. She picked the paperback back up. Vance is a sergeant. Sergeants don't do that. Sergeants get told to do that. Ethan sat in a laundromat at 6:22 in the morning, holding a pair of his daughter's jeans, and felt the floor tilt for the second time in a week. There's somebody above him. There's somebody above him, Okafor said. And I don't know who it is, and I have not known for 26 months, and I'll tell you the reason, and then you can decide whether you want any part of this. She turned a page she wasn't reading. In September of last year, I had a witness, Terrence Wade. Ran a mechanic shop on 9th. Beautiful witness. 9 years of records, willing, angry, ready. We were 4 days from putting him in front of a grand jury. What happened? He recanted, Okafor said, on a Thursday. Called my office at 9 in the morning and said he'd made it all up. Wouldn't say why. Wouldn't look at me. And on the Monday before that Thursday, his name went on one internal document one time in one building. She closed the book. It never left that building, Mr. Carter, and by Thursday my witness was gone. Ethan didn't move. Say it plain, he said. The leak isn't in the police department, Okafor said. The leak is in my task force. And that was the moment the thing turned all the way over, because Ethan had spent a week thinking he was fighting a gang, and then a week thinking he was fighting a system, and now he was sitting on a plastic chair in a laundromat, being told that the only door out was also being watched. How many people on your task force? He asked. 9. How many are police? 2 liaisons. Okafor's mouth was a line. And before you ask, I can't remove them. They're there by agreement. It's a joint task force, and the second I move on them, whoever it is knows I know, and then everything I've got burns, and I get transferred to Butte. So you've been sitting on it. I've been sitting on it for 11 months, she said, with a dead case and 2 people at my own table watching me, and I cannot tell my own supervisor because I don't know how far up it goes. And yes, Mr. Carter, in case you're wondering, yes, that is a hell of a thing to carry to work every day. Ethan folded another shirt. So you need somebody outside, he said. I need somebody who doesn't exist on any list in that building. Okafor turned and looked at him full on for the first time. I need somebody who can walk into a barbershop and come out with a manila envelope, and who never puts a single name on a single piece of federal paper until the day I'm ready to slam the door. I need a bridge, Mr. Carter. I've needed one for 2 years. And every time I've built one out of a scared witness, somebody set fire to it before I could walk across. You want me to hold 4 civilians together in the dark, Ethan said, with no protection, no promise, and no idea how long. Yes. With my daughter in the house. Okafor didn't flinch, and she didn't soften it. Yes, she said. Ethan looked at the basket on his knees. Maddie's jeans. Maddie's stupid shirt with the cat on it that she'd had since 4th grade, and refused to give up, even though the sleeves came halfway up her forearms now. Ma'am, I have to tell you something. All right? In 2019, my wife was killed. He said it the way you'd read a weather report because that was the only way it would come out at all. In Ohio, I gave a statement about a man at a job site who was stealing copper. It was 14 sentences. It was nothing. It was a nothing statement, ma'am, about copper. His hands had stopped moving on the laundry. 4 months later, somebody put a car through a red light on Route 32 and never stopped, and they never found it, and they never will, and I don't know. I have never known, not for one day in 6 years, whether that was them or whether that was just a Tuesday. Okafor said nothing. That's the whole thing, Ethan said. That's the whole rule. My rule is I don't stand up because the last time I stood up I don't know if my wife died for it, and there's nobody on this earth who can tell me, and I have to pick that up every single morning and carry it to a kid who's got her eyebrows. The dryer buzzed. Mr. Carter, Okafor said quietly, I'm not going to tell you it was a coincidence. I'd be lying, and you'd know. Yeah, I'm going to tell you something else instead. She stood up, and she picked up her basket, and she stood there for a second looking down at him. Terrence Wade's shop is a vape store now. Ruben Alvarez sells irrigation supply in Yuma. There's a flower shop on 5th that's been empty 2 years, and a man named Delgado who's going to be paying a mortgage on a building until he's 80. And on the 15th of next month, somebody is going to walk into Hector Reyes's restaurant, and the only question anybody in this entire city has is whether it costs the old man his money or his daughter. She put a business card down on the chair between them. You don't have to stand up, she said. You already did. 11 million people watched. The only thing you get to decide now is whether it meant anything. She walked out with her laundry at 6:41 in the morning. Ethan sat there for another 20 minutes with an empty basket, and then he put the card in his pocket. The next 4 days, he did nothing at all, and it nearly killed him. That was the instruction. Be boring. He installed a camera system at a veterinary clinic. He mowed the lawn. He took Maddie for ice cream on Wednesday for no reason, and she asked him 3 times what was wrong, and he said nothing each time, and she stopped asking which was worse. And they came anyway. Tuesday. There was a car at the end of his street that hadn't been there before, and it was there again. Wednesday, in the same spot facing the same way. Thursday, his work van got followed from Ridgefield all the way to the Route 9 exit by a gray sedan that never got closer than 4 cars back and never once passed him. Friday, somebody put a for sale sign in his front yard. Ethan came home at 5:40, and there it was hammered into his grass with a realtor's face on it, and he stood in his driveway and understood the message perfectly because it was very good work. It was funny, it was legal, it was deniable, and it told him they'd been standing on his lawn with a mallet in broad daylight, and nobody on that whole street had said one word. He called the realtor. The realtor had never heard of him. Somebody had phoned the listing in that morning, using his name and his address, and the last 4 of a social security number that was not his. That was the part that stopped him cold in his own kitchen. They hadn't guessed his information. They'd pulled it. Somebody had run Ethan Carter through a database, and there is exactly one kind of database where you can get a man's address and a partial social and a plate number in an afternoon. They hadn't sent a thug to his house. They'd sent a records check. He was still standing there at 5:52 when the school called. Mr. Carter, this is Denise at Lincoln Middle Front Office. Hi, this is probably nothing, and I really don't want to alarm you. Ethan's whole body went to 0. Ma'am, is my daughter all right? She's fine. She's absolutely fine. She's in the library right now. I'm looking at her. What happened? A gentleman came in at 2:41 this afternoon and asked to sign out Madeline Carter, Denise said, and her voice was shaking, and Ethan understood that she had been building up to this call for 3 hours. He said he was picking her up for a family thing. And I said, "Sir, I need to see ID, and I need you to be on the authorized list," and Mr. Carter, he showed me a badge. The kitchen went white at the edges. "He showed you a badge. He said it was a police matter. He said there'd been an incident. He said it was time sensitive." Denise was crying now. "And I want you to know that. I want to be honest with you, because I've been sick about it since 2:41. I almost went and got her. I had my hand on the phone to call her out of class, and the only reason I didn't is that Ms. Cortez walked past the window, and she looked at him and she said, 'I know every officer at this school, and I don't know you.'" "Where is he now?" "He left. He said my mistake, and he smiled at me and he left." She was gasping. "Mr. Carter? He smiled at me. He wasn't scared at all. Who does that? Who walks into a school and does that and just walks out smiling?" Ethan put his free hand flat on the counter to hold himself to the earth. "Denise, listen to me. You did good. You hear me. You did good, and Ms. Cortez did good." His voice came out level, and it cost him more than anything he had ever done. "I need one thing from you. The sign-out sheet." He put his hand on it, didn't he? Before you asked for ID. Yes, he started to write. "Don't touch it. Don't throw it out. Put it in an envelope and put it in a drawer, and don't tell one other adult in that building. Not the principal. Nobody." "Mr. Carter, shouldn't we call the police?" "Denise," Ethan said. "What do you think the badge was?" The line went silent. He drove to that school at 71 miles an hour in a 45 and did not touch the brake once, and he walked into the library at 6:09 in the evening and found his daughter sitting cross-legged on a beanbag with a book safe. Hole annoyed at him for being late, and Ethan Carter got down on one knee on the carpet of a middle school library and hugged his 11-year-old so hard she squawked. Dad, what is wrong with—" "Nothing. You're squeezing my spine." "I know. Dad?" She pulled back and looked at him, and she saw it, all of it, whatever was on his face, and Maddie Carter's own face changed in a way he would think about for the rest of his life. "Dad, what happened?" "Get your bag, Mads." "Dad, get your bag." That night his phone rang at 10:20 from a blocked number, and he already knew, and he answered it anyway, because there are moments when a man wants to hear it. "You get the sign." Marcus Deal's voice, loose, enjoying himself. "The realtor thing. That was mine. That was all me. I've been laughing about that since Tuesday." Ethan said nothing. "And I heard somebody stopped by your kid's school," Marcus said. "That one wasn't me. That one came from upstairs. See, that's what I've been trying to tell you, hero. That's the part you don't get. I'm the nice one." Ethan stood in his dark hallway outside his sleeping daughter's door. "Say what you called to say," he said. "Protect your little girl," Marcus said. "That's it. That's all. I'm being helpful. Because next time, and there's going to be a next time, that's not a threat. That's a schedule next time we won't miss." The line went dead. And Ethan Carter stood in that hallway for a full minute, and then he went into the kitchen, and he picked up the phone Okafor had given him. And when she answered on the first ring at 10:34 at night, he said 6 words. "I'm in, and I have a badge number." Okafor's voice changed instantly. "Say again." "A man tried to sign my daughter out of school today at 2:41. He flashed a badge at a front office clerk and started to write on the sign, 'In, and I have a badge number.'" Okafor's voice changed instantly. "Say again." "A man tried to sign my daughter out of school today at 2:41. He flashed a badge at a front office clerk and started to write on the sign-out sheet before she asked for ID. She's got the sheet. He wrote 4 digits. Give them to me." He gave them to her, and Special Agent Dana Okafor did not say anything for so long that Ethan pulled the phone away from his ear to see if the call had dropped. "Agent Okafor?" "Mr. Carter." Her voice had gone strange thin and very quiet and absolutely steady in the way that people's voices go when the floor has just come out from under them and they refuse to fall. "That badge number isn't Vance." Then who is it? It's one of mine, she said. It's one of my liaisons. He's been sitting at my table for 26 months. Ethan didn't say anything. He stood in his dark kitchen with his back against the counter and let her finish falling. 26 months, Okafor said. Her voice had gone somewhere flat and far away. He brought donuts, Mr. Carter. He brought donuts on Fridays. He held the elevator for me. I know his kids' names. I know his dog's name. Say the name. Detective Wesley Marsh, 4th District, badge 2209. She let out a breath that shook once and then stopped shaking because she made it stop. He sat 4 feet from me and watched me build a case against him for 2 years, and every Monday morning he asked me how it was going, and I told him. Agent Okafor. Terrence Wade. She wasn't listening. September. I put Terrence Wade's name in a briefing memo on a Monday, and I read that memo out loud to 9 people in a conference room, and Marsh was in the second chair on the left, and on Thursday, Terrence called and said he made it up. Something cracked. I've spent 11 months thinking I had a mole. I never once thought I'd had coffee with him. Ma'am, stop. Don't tell me to stop. You've got about 90 seconds, Ethan said, before your brain gets past the betrayal and gets to the real problem. And I'd rather you got there now because I've got a kid asleep down the hall and I need you sharp. Silence. Then quieter. What's the real problem? Your mole tried to sign my daughter out of a school today, Ethan said. In person, with his own badge, his own hand on the sheet. He looked at the hallway at the strip of light under his daughter's door. Agent, a mole doesn't do that. A mole's whole job is to never be seen. If Wesley Marsh drove to Lincoln Middle at 2:41 in the afternoon and put his real face in front of a front office clerk, then Wesley Marsh has stopped being careful. Which means he's not calling the shots, Ethan said. Somebody made him do it, and whoever made him do it doesn't care that he burned himself because they've already decided Marsh is disposable. Okafor was quiet for a long moment. That's what I would have gotten to, she said. It just would have taken me an hour. Then we saved an hour. Mr. Carter. She was back. He could hear it, the thing coming back up in her voice like a spine straightening. I want you to understand what you just handed me. For 2 years, I had a leak and no shape. Now I've got a name and a badge number and a physical piece of paper with his handwriting on it in a drawer in a middle school, and he doesn't know I have it. He doesn't know Denise kept the sheet. He doesn't know a teacher looked at him, Okafor said. Ms. Cortez, my entire case, 26 months of my professional life, is standing on a 6th grade teacher who happened to walk past a window. At 11:02 that night, Ethan Carter turned his kitchen light on and sat down and did not go to bed at all, and this time it wasn't because he couldn't sleep. It was because he'd finally seen it. He put a legal pad on the table, and he built the shape the way he'd been taught to build a target package a long time ago in a different life for different reasons. On top the mouth. Marcus Deal Collections. Loud, stupid, disposable. Under Marcus, the enforcers. Beside Marcus, Sergeant Daniel Vance. Badge 4471. The man whose name got said out loud. The man whose signature was on 3 unfounded complaints. The man everybody was supposed to find. Ethan looked at that for a while. Then he wrote under Vance one word. Bait. Because that was the piece that hadn't fit since Tuesday. Marcus had told Olivia to ask for Vance by name. He'd handed her the name. Nobody hands you the name of the man who owns them. You hand somebody a name when you want them to stop looking. Vance wasn't the top of the pyramid. Vance was the lid on it. At 12:40 a.m., he wrote a 4th line, and it was blank, and he sat and stared at the blank line for 20 minutes, and then he wrote one thing on it. 11 years. The voice on the phone at 1 in the morning. Calm. Older. Almost kind. There's no bad guy. There's a system. A man who'd said the number by accident, and then gone silent for 1 beat too long, and then Ethan had said, Sergeant Vance, and the man had hung up. Ethan had thought all week that he'd hung up because he'd been caught. He sat in his kitchen at 12:41 in the morning and understood with a cold drop straight through the middle of him that the man had hung up because he'd gotten away with it. He'd hung up smiling. He called Okafor at 12:44. "The 1 a.m. call," he said. "The man who offered me the deal. That wasn't Vance." "You told me it was Vance." "I told him it was Vance," Ethan said, "and he let me. He let me have it, and he ended the call. Agent, that man knew my street, he knew my truck, he knew my kid's homeroom teacher and the sunflowers on her door, and he wasn't reading it off a screen, he was remembering it, he got the room number wrong and corrected himself. That's a man who's read a file. Or written one. Or written. How many people in that building," Ethan said, "can pull a private citizen's address and partial social in an afternoon close? 22 complaints across 4 zip codes. Over 11 years rotate, 15 different responding officers, so no pattern lands on any one of them, and put a detective in a federal task force." Okafor didn't answer. "Ma'am." "One," she said. "Say it." "There's one?" Okafor said. "There's exactly one, and I've been in his office and I've shaken his hand, and he put Marsh on my task force." Her breath went out of her. "He picked him. He personally picked my liaisons. He sat behind his desk and said, 'Dana, I'm giving you my best people.'" "Name: Captain Robert Kessler," she said. 31 years. Commander of the 4th District. He runs complaint routing, case disposition, and personnel assignment for 4 zip codes." A pause, and then very slowly, like a woman reading her own handwriting on a wall. "He's 4 zip codes, Mr. Carter. He's the exact 4. Neither of them said anything for a while. "He's got a plaque," Okafor said finally, and there was something in it close to laughing and nowhere near it. "He's got a community service plaque from the Merchants Association on his wall. They gave him a plaque." At 1:15 in the morning, she said, "I can't touch him." "I know. I want you to understand exactly how much I can't touch him. I have 0 evidence. I have a man's voice on a phone with no recording a number he said out loud to a private citizen with no witness and a theory. If I write Robert Kessler's name on any federal document, it goes through a system that Wesley Marsh has access to, and by Thursday, Marcus Deal is on a beach, and Vance is retired on a medical, and every box in your house is on fire. Then don't write it down. That's not how." "Agent Okafor." Ethan sat forward. "You've got a leak. You've been treating it like a wound. Start treating it like a door." Silence on the line. "Say more," Okafor said. "He's been feeding them everything you say for 2 years. Fine. So on Monday you say something." He heard her sit up. He actually heard the chair. "A canary trap," she said. 9 people at your table," Ethan said. 9 slightly different versions. Same briefing, same meeting, but every single person gets one detail that belongs only to them. Different time, different address, different name for the witness. Marsh gets his own version. "Marsh gets his own version," Ethan said. "And then we sit on the corner and we see which version walks in the door." Okafor was quiet for so long he thought she'd hung up. "Mr. Carter," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Where'd you learn this?" "Ma'am, I install keypads at dentists' offices." "Uh-huh," Okafor said. The trap went in on a Monday at 9 a.m. in a conference room on the 4th floor of a federal building, and it took 11 minutes. Okafor stood up in front of 9 people and told them the case was closing. She told them she'd been ordered to wind it down. She told them there was one last thing, a witness, a big one. A man named Ruben Alvarez who'd come back from Arizona and was willing to give a sworn statement about the 2023 arson, and she told them she'd be sitting down with him for a proffer. And then she gave each person in that room a folder with the time and the place. 8 folders said Thursday. One folder, the one in the second chair on the left, said Wednesday 4 p.m. at a motel on Route 9. Detective Wesley Marsh took the folder. He asked one question. He asked whether Alvarez was bringing counsel. Okafor said no. And Marsh nodded and wrote it down, and at 9:14 he went out into the hallway to take a call. On Wednesday at 3:41 in the afternoon, 48 minutes before a meeting that did not exist, a gray sedan pulled into the parking lot of the Route 9 motel, And two men got out and walked to room 112 and knocked on the door of an empty room, and the FBI photographed every second of it from a van across the street, and one of those men was Marcus Deal. The other one was Sergeant Daniel Vance. He was in uniform. Okafor called Ethan at 4:09, and she was breathing like she'd run upstairs. "We got him. We got them both. Vance is on camera at a location that exists in exactly one folder in one man's hands." She was almost laughing. 26 months, Mr. Carter. 26 months, and it took 11 minutes. "Do you have Kessler?" The laughing stopped. "No." "Then you don't have anything." "Mr. Carter, you've got Marsh for leaking," Ethan said. "You've got Vance for showing up somewhere. You've got Marcus for standing in a parking lot. And you have exactly nothing that puts Robert Kessler in a single frame, and that man has 31 years and a plaque, and the day you arrest his people, he will be the loudest, saddest, most cooperative police captain in America. He'll cry on the news. He'll say he's sick about it." Ethan's voice didn't rise at all. "And then in 11 months there'll be another Marcus and another Block, and Ray Delgado will be 72. Okafor was silent. "You told me yourself, ma'am. There's a line of Marcuses." "Then what do you want me to do?" she said. "Because I'm not going to sit on this. Vance made a move on a witness who doesn't exist. If he makes a move on one who does, that's a body." "I want you to flip Marsh," Ethan said. "Marsh will never." "Marsh drove to a middle school," Ethan said, "in the middle of a workday, and put his own face and his own badge in front of a clerk and tried to walk out with an 11-year-old girl. And you and I both know he didn't want to. He's a detective with 20 years and 2 kids and a dog whose name you know, and he did the single stupidest thing a man in his position could possibly do. He let it land. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what somebody had to have on a man to make him do that." Silence. "He's not the mole," Okafor said slowly. "He's a hostage." "He's been a hostage for 2 years, Ethan said. "And he's exhausted. Ma'am, that man is so tired. Go put the sign-out sheet on a table in front of him with his own handwriting on it, and don't say one word, and I will bet you everything I own that he cries before you do." Wesley Marsh cried in 9 minutes. Okafor called Ethan from a stairwell at 9:20 that night, and her voice was a wreck. "He didn't even ask for a lawyer," she said. "I put the sheet down, that's all. I put the sheet down and slid it over, and I sat there, and he looked at it, and he looked at me, and he said..." She stopped. He said, "Is she okay?" First thing out of his mouth, "About your daughter." He said, "Is she okay?" And then he put his head in his hands, and he broke Mr. Carter. "Give me the shape." 2016. His brother-in-law got picked up on a possession charge that would have been a felony, and Kessler made it a misdemeanor. That's it. That's the hook. That's the whole hook of favor for a brother-in-law 10 years ago. Okafor's voice was rising. "And then it was one thing, and then it was one more thing, and then it's 2019, and he's routing paper, and it's 2023, and he's sitting in my conference room. And Wednesday, he's standing outside a school telling himself he's just gonna scare a guy, and he's been eating antacids for 6 years, and hasn't slept since September. And he said, 'I've been waiting for somebody to knock on my door since 2018. Ethan closed his eyes. "That's how it works," he said quietly. "That's how it always works. Nobody signs up. They just never find the day to stop." "He'll wear a wire," Okafor said. "Mr. Carter. He'll wear a wire on Kessler. He offered. I didn't even ask, he offered." "When?" "The 15th. And there it was. "Because that's the only day," Okafor said. "Kessler doesn't touch money. In 11 years, he has never touched a dollar, never made a call from a phone in his name, never sent a text that wasn't about his kids' soccer. He does one thing one time a month. On the 15th in the evening, he takes a meeting. And Marsh has been in the car for that meeting 4 times. And what happens on the 15th this month?" Ethan said, "with a restaurant that told him no in front of 11 million people?" Okafor didn't answer. "Say it." "He makes an example," she said. "The 15th was in 6 days. Ethan spent them doing the hardest thing he had ever done in his life, which was asking 4 terrified people to walk into it on purpose. He did Ray Delgado first on Saturday in the barber shop with the lights off and the shades down and 2 chairs pulled together. He told the old man the truth, all of it, the way he'd have wanted it. Told to him that there was a captain, that there was a wire, that there was a plan, and that the plan required Rhea's family kitchen to be open and full on the 15th, and that if anything went wrong at all, it would go wrong there. Ray Delgado listened with his hands on his knees. "You want us to be the bait," he said. "Yes, sir." "You want a room full of old men and mothers with kids to sit there and wait for it?" "Yes, sir." Ethan didn't soften it. "And Mr. Delgado, I'm not going to tell you it's safe, because you'd know I was lying, and because you were right about me the first time. I'm not really here for a haircut." Ray was quiet a long while. 31 years, he said. "You said 31 years he's been a police captain." "Yes, sir." "So he was there when I opened this shop?" Ray's voice went strange. "I opened in '94. He was already there. This whole time, my whole life in this building, he's been in that office." "Yes, sir." Ray Delgado stood up and went to the register and took the manila envelope out of the drawer, the one Ethan had already photocopied, the one with case number 24-00312 in it, and he held it in both hands. "My father was in the Ardennes," he said. "Did you know that, 18 years old? He never said one word about it his whole life, except one time when I was about 9, and he was drunk. And he said, 'Raymond, the ones that got killed weren't the scared ones. Everybody was scared. The ones that got killed were the ones that were scared alone.'" He put the envelope in Ethan's hands. "I've been scared alone for 6 months," Ray Delgado said. "I'd rather be scared with company." Mrs. Kim took 20 minutes and one question. She asked whether the captain would go to jail. Ethan said he didn't know. She said, "Then why would I do it?" And Ethan said, "Because your handwriting will be in a federal courtroom, and he will have to sit there and listen to it." And Mrs. Kim, who was 58 years old and had not raised her voice in 11 months, said, "Okay, yes." Gus Vandermeer said yes before Ethan finished the sentence and then had to sit down on a milk crate. And Hector Reyes said no. That was the one Ethan hadn't planned for. "No," Hector said. Monday afternoon, the empty dining room, his own restaurant. "No, not in here, not with people in here. You want to do this? Do it in the street. Do it in the parking lot. Do it anywhere. But I'm not putting my customers." "Papa." "No, Olivia. They already put their hands on me," Olivia said. Hector's face came apart. "That's my point," he said. "That's my whole point. You want me to open my doors and let them in one more time. On purpose, mija. I have been paying that man for 11 months to keep this room safe. That's the only thing I've been buying." "You haven't been buying anything," Olivia said, and her voice cracked wide open. "Papa, listen to yourself. $16,500, and he still put his hand on my throat. You never bought safety. You bought time. And it ran out anyway, and it was always going to run out anyway, and you knew that." Hector Reyes stood in the middle of his restaurant and put his hands over his face. "I couldn't stop it," he said. "You don't understand. Ruben tried and they burned his van. Ray tried and they broke his window. I did the math, mija, every single month for 11 months. I sat with a calculator, and I did the math, and every month the answer was, pay him. I know. And every month I hated myself a little more, and every month I told myself next month I'll... "Papa." "And then he put his hand on you," Hector whispered, "and I was 9 feet away, and a stranger stood up before I did." The room was very quiet. "Mr. Reyes," Ethan said. Hector didn't look up. "Mr. Reyes, look at me." Ethan waited until the old man did. "You want to know the actual difference between you and me? 6 years ago, a man asked me for a statement about copper wire. 14 sentences. And I gave it because I was a hero, because I stood up. And 4 months later, my wife was dead on Route 32. And I have never known, not once, not for one single day, whether that was because of me." Hector's mouth opened. "So don't stand in this room and tell me you were a coward for protecting your kid," Ethan said, and it came out rough for the first time all week. "I've done it your way for 6 years. I did it your way this whole month. I built floodlights on my house, and I told Olivia to go home, and I sat in my truck in your parking lot and drove away." He put his hands flat on the table. "It doesn't work, Hector. That's the only thing I've learned. It doesn't work. They came to my house anyway. They came to my daughter's school anyway. There's no price you can pay to be left alone because leaving you alone was never the product." Hector Reyes stood there. "Then what's the product?" he said. "You," Ethan said. "Scared, paying, every month, forever. That is the business." At 2:11 on Tuesday afternoon, the day before the 15th, a man in a dust-covered Silverado with Arizona plates pulled up outside Reyes' family kitchen and got out and stood there. Hector saw him through the window and dropped a coffee pot. Ruben Alvarez walked into that restaurant for the first time in 2 years, and the two old men grabbed each other in the middle of the floor, and neither one of them could say anything at all for about a minute and a half. 19 hours. Ruben finally got out. "I drove 19 hours. I told my wife Sunday night. I said, 'Sophia, I gotta go home for a couple days.' And she said, 'Why?' And I said," his voice went, "I said because somebody finally asked." At 6:40 on the evening of the 15th, Ethan Carter drove his daughter to Priya's house. "2 nights, he said. "You said 1. "It's 2 now." "Dad?" Maddie didn't get out of the truck. She sat there with her bag in her lap. "Dad, are you going to tell me, Mads? Because I'm 11, not 4. Her chin was going. "There were funeral flowers on our porch. There's a stranger's car parked at the end of our street every day. You made the school call you a code word. You got a haircut that looks insane. Hey. And you keep saying nothing," Maddie said, and her voice broke, and it took him out at the knees. "You said nothing after Mom, too. For like a year, Dad. Everybody kept saying nothing to me. And I found out what happened from a kid at school." Ethan sat there with both hands on the wheel. Then he turned the truck off. "Okay," he said. "Okay what?" "Okay, I'll tell you the truth." He turned in the seat and faced his daughter. "There are some men in this city who've been hurting people for money for a long time. They've been getting away with it because everybody's too scared to say so out loud. And tonight, some people are going to say it out loud, and I'm going to be there when they do, because I asked them to, and you don't ask people to do something and then not show up." Maddie stared at him. "Are they going to hurt you?" "They're going to try." "Dad?" "Mads." He took her hand. "You asked for the truth. That's the truth. There's about 140 other people in it with me tonight, and most of them are older than me and scared out of their minds, and they're coming anyway." Maddie Carter sat in the front seat of a pickup truck outside her friend's house and cried like she hadn't since she was 5 years old, and her father let her and didn't fix it and didn't say nothing. "That thing you always say," she said, finally wiping her face with her sleeve, "about Mom, that she was the bravest person you ever met." "Yeah." "Was she?" "Yeah, baby, she was." Maddie got out of the truck. Then she turned around and put both arms through the window and grabbed him by the jacket. "Then don't you dare come in second," she said. At 8:04 p.m. on the 15th, Reyes' family kitchen was full. It was full in a way it hadn't been in 11 months. Ray Delgado at the counter in a jacket and tie he'd bought for a funeral in 2009. Mrs. Kim in booth 2 with her shoebox in a canvas bag on her lap. Gus Vandermeer taking up an entire side of booth 6. Ruben Alvarez next to Hector at the register, both of them not talking. Both of them just standing there. Dante Willis in the kitchen doorway with his phone in his apron. The old man in the VFW cap in the same seat he'd been in on the Tuesday it started, because he had never once stopped coming, not one day of the whole 11 months. 140 people, cousins, neighbors, 2 guys from the Union Hall who nobody had invited, somebody's church group, every single one of them with a phone in their hand. At 8:19, Ethan's phone buzzed with 2 words from Okafor. "Cars moving." At 8:31, a dark blue sedan came down 5th and parked across the street from Reyes' family kitchen and did not turn its engine off. 2 men in the front. Detective Wesley Marsh at the wheel with a wire taped to his sternum and hands that would not stop sweating. And in the passenger seat, in a windbreaker, with his reading glasses still hanging off his collar from the desk he'd left 20 minutes ago, sat Captain Robert Kessler, 31 years badge 991 commander of the 4th District. At 8:33, he said into a microphone he did not know existed the 7 words that ended him. All right, let's go remind them why. In a van 4 blocks away, Special Agent Dana Okafor heard those 7 words come through a headset and put her hand over her mouth. Say again, her tech said. Say again was that, that's him. She couldn't get her voice above a whisper. That's Robert Kessler on a wire. 26 months. Log it. Log the time. 8:33. Log it. Inside the restaurant, Ethan Carter's phone buzzed once against the table. He looked at it. Then he put it face down and looked up at 140 people who were all every single one of them looking at him. They're here, he said. Nobody moved. Okay. Ethan stood up slow. Everybody listen. This is the part where I tell you what I need, and then I'm going to shut up, and you're going to do what you decide to do, and either way is fine, and nobody in this room owes me anything. Son, Ray Delgado said, just say it. Stay in your seats. That's it. That's the whole thing. Ethan's voice was flat and calm, and it carried to the back. You don't fight. You don't yell. You don't put yourself between anybody and anything. You stay in your seat and you keep your phone up, and you keep it recording, and you do not stop recording no matter what you see. And if they come at you, that was Gus Vandermeer, 68, from booth 6. Then you stay in your seat, Ethan said. The hell I will. Gus. The hell I will. Gus Vandermeer's jaw was shaking. You want me to sit here and watch you get... Yes, Ethan said. That is exactly what I want. Because the only thing that beats these men tonight is 140 cameras and 0 excuses. The second one of us swings were a brawl, and a brawl is a thing a police captain can explain. He looked around the room. Nobody's explaining anything tonight. At 8:36, the bell over the door rang. Marcus Deal came in first, and he had 4 men with him, and he got 3 steps into that restaurant before he stopped dead because he had walked into 140 people sitting in silence with their phones up. Nobody was eating. Nobody was pretending to eat. 140 faces turned waiting. Ethan watched something go across Marcus Deal's face that he'd only seen once before in that same room 5 weeks ago. What is this? Marcus said. Nobody answered. What is this, Hector? He spun toward the register. What are all these people? Dinner, Hector Reyes said. The old man was standing behind his own register with his hands flat on the counter, and his voice did not shake, and Ethan Carter would remember the sound of it for the rest of his life. Dinner, Hector said again. It's a restaurant, Marcus. People eat here. It's Tuesday. There's 100 people in here on a Tuesday. Business is up, Hector said. Somebody in booth 11 laughed. It got strangled halfway. But it was out. It had happened. Somebody had laughed at Marcus Deal out loud in a room, and Ethan watched that land on the man like a slap. Where is he? Marcus's head was going back and forth. Where's there? There he is. He came down the middle aisle and stopped 6 feet from Ethan Carter's table, in the exact same spot he'd stood 5 weeks earlier, and this time he wasn't smiling at all. Hey, hero. Marcus? You brought friends. Marcus's eyes went around the room, and everywhere they went, phones. You brought a whole... What is this? Is this a thing? Did you organize a thing? Did you make a Facebook group? No, Ethan said. They came on their own. Bull. Ask 'em. And Marcus Deal made his last mistake of the night, which was that he looked. He actually turned around and looked, and he found Ray Delgado at the counter in a funeral suit, and Mrs. Kim in booth 2 with a canvas bag on her lap, and Gus Vandermeer taking up half a booth with his fists on the table, and an old man in a VFW cap who had not missed a single day in 11 months. And every one of them looked straight back at him. That had never happened before. Not once. Not in 4 years. Ray, Marcus said. And his voice was different, smaller, almost pleading a kid who'd found his dog in somebody else's yard. Ray, come on. Ray, I've been coming to your shop since I was 16. You cut my hair for my mother's funeral. I know, Ray Delgado said. So what are you doing? Sitting here. Ray, I'm just sitting here, Marcus. The old man's eyes were wet and his voice was absolutely level. That's all I'm doing. I'm 71 years old and I'm sitting in a chair in a restaurant and I'm not going anywhere. That's the whole thing I'm doing. He nodded once. Turns out it's the only thing I ever had to do. At 8:39 the door opened again and Sergeant Daniel Vance walked in uniform, and Ethan felt the temperature of the whole room drop, because that was the thing that was the actual thing that was 11 years of it, walking through a door in a uniform paid for by every person in that building, and 140 people watched a police sergeant walk in beside a man who had put his hand on a woman's throat, and there was no more argument, and there was no more crazy, and there was nothing left to explain to anybody's wife in any kitchen. Ray Delgado said, "Oh my God," out loud. "All right," Vance called out. "All right, everybody, let's clear it out. This is a police matter. Everybody up, let's go out the front." Nobody moved. "I said clear it out." Nobody moved. Vance's face changed. Ethan watched. It watched 22 years of a man being obeyed run into a wall for the first time. "Hey," Vance's voice cracked up an octave. "That's an order. Everybody out. You want to be charged with obstruction. You want to explain to your..." Sergeant Hector Reyes said, "Do you have a warrant?" The whole room turned. "Excuse me, a warrant?" Hector came around the counter. 61 years old, apron on. "Because this is private property, and it's my private property, and I bought it in 2003, and if you want to make 140 paying customers leave my restaurant, I think you need a warrant." He stopped in front of the man. "Do you have one? Hector, do you have one?" "Old man, I will put you on the ground." "Then put me on the ground," Hector Reyes said. Silence. "Put me on the ground," Hector said again, louder, and his voice broke right in the middle of it, and he kept going anyway. "Right here, in front of everybody, in front of 140 phones. Do it, Sergeant. I've been paying you for 11 months. I've paid you $16,500 out of my daughter's college money, and I've never asked you for one thing, and now I'm asking. Put me on the ground." Daniel Vance did not move. He stood in the middle of Reyes' family kitchen, with his hand hovering somewhere near his belt, and 140 cameras on him, and he did not move. And that was the moment Okafor would say it later in a conference room in front of a screen. That was the moment the 4th District died. "Marcus," Vance said quietly, "we're going." "What?" "We're going. Now." "Are you kidding me?" "Marcus?" Vance grabbed his arm. "Look around. Look around." And Marcus Deal looked around one more time, and this time he saw it, all of it, and Ethan Carter watched a man understand in real time that the thing he had been standing on for 4 years had never actually existed. It was never the fists. It was never the badge. It was that everybody had agreed to be alone. And they'd stopped. "You're all dead," Marcus said. It came out ragged. He said it to the whole room. "You hear me, every one of you. I know where every one of you lives. Ray, I know where you live. Gus, Hector, I know where your daughter..." "Say it," Ethan said. Marcus stopped. "Say the rest of it," Ethan said quietly. "Go ahead. There's 140 phones in this room, Marcus. Finish the sentence." And Marcus Deal, who had never in his life been unable to finish a sentence, stood in the middle of that restaurant with his mouth open and nothing coming out. "That's what I thought," Ethan said. At 8:44 they walked out. Both of them. Marcus first, then Vance, and the bell over the door rang, and for about 4 seconds nobody in that building breathed. And then Mrs. Kim in booth 2 started clapping. Just her. Alone. 58 years old, hands over her head, clapping. And Gus Vandermeer came out of booth 6 clapping. And then Ruben Alvarez. And then the old man in the VFW cap standing up out of his chair, with tears running straight down into his collar. And then 140 people in a family restaurant on 5th Street stood up and made a noise that they heard 4 blocks away in a surveillance van. "What is that?" Okafor's tech said. "What the hell is that?" Okafor had her eyes closed. "That's them," she said, which is when it went wrong. At 8:46, out in the parking lot, Captain Robert Kessler got out of a dark blue sedan and started walking toward the restaurant. And in the van, Dana Okafor came out of her chair so fast she took the headset with her. "No, no, he's out of the car. Marsh, why is he out of the car?" The wire crackled. "Cap." Wesley Marsh's voice tight wrong. "Cap, hang on. Cap, get back in the—" "They're clapping Wes." "Captain, do you hear that?" And Kessler's voice was calm. That was the thing that put ice down Okafor's spine. He was completely, perfectly calm. 31 years, and I have never once heard that block make a sound. Do you understand what that is? That's not a party. That's a precedent. Cap Vance says there's 100 people in there. I know how many people are in there, Kessler said. That's the point. You don't fix a precedent quietly, Wes. You fix it in front of everybody. In the van, Okafor was already moving. Green light, green light. Everybody move right now. Ma'am, we're 4 blocks. Move. At 8:47, the bell over the door of Reyes Family Kitchen rang for the last time that night, and Captain Robert Kessler walked in alone. The clapping stopped like somebody had cut a wire, because half the people in that room knew him. That was the horror of it. Ray Delgado knew him. Hector Reyes knew him. The old man in the VFW cap knew him. He'd handed out turkeys at the church on Thanksgiving. He'd stood on a folding stage at the Block Festival in a polo shirt. There was a picture of him on the wall of the barber shop from 2011, shaking Ray Delgado's hand. Ethan Carter looked at him and thought, of course. Of course it was the nice one. It was always going to be the nice one. Evening, folks. Kessler had his hands in his windbreaker pockets, reading glasses on his collar. He looked like somebody's uncle. Sorry to interrupt. Ray, Hector, Gus, how's your mother? Nobody answered. I got a call. Kessler said that there was a disturbance here. Sergeant Vance says there was some kind of confrontation. He looked around mild. Anybody want to tell me what happened? Silence. Anybody. And Ethan watched it start to work. That was the thing nobody would ever understand who hadn't been in that room. It worked. 31 years of a face at a barbecue and a man in a windbreaker asking a reasonable question in a reasonable voice, and Ethan actually watched 2 or 3 phones start to come down. Hector, Kessler said gently, you want to file a complaint because I'll take it right now, personally. You want to make a statement about Marcus Deal, say the word. Hector Reyes opened his mouth, and Ethan Carter said, don't. Kessler turned, and for 1 second, the 2 of them looked at each other across a full restaurant, and Ethan heard it again. 1 in the morning, a calm voice, almost kind. There's no bad guy, son. You're fighting the way things are. You, Kessler said. Me. Ethan Carter. Kessler smiled. It was a good smile. It was a really good smile. 402 Brambleton, Ms. Cortez's homeroom, Ethan said, the one with the sunflowers on the door. The smile didn't move, but something behind it did. We spoke, Kessler said. We did. I made you an offer, a generous one. He took a step down the aisle. I told you it expired. You did, and here you are. Kessler's voice stayed absolutely pleasant, and it carried, and every person in that room heard it. So let me ask you something in front of your friends, in front of Ray and Hector and this nice lady with the bag on her lap. What exactly do you think happens tomorrow? Ethan didn't answer. Marcus goes away, fine. Kessler shrugged. Vance retires. Fine. And then it's the 16th and every one of these people still has to open their door at 6 in the morning, and you'll be gone, sir. That's the part nobody says out loud. You'll go back to your house and your kid and your keypads, and these people will still be here. He turned and addressed the room, and he did it beautifully. Folks, I've been in this neighborhood 31 years. This man's been in it 5 weeks. Ask yourselves who's going to be here in November. Nobody spoke. That's not a threat, Kessler said. That's just arithmetic. And Ethan Carter said, 11 years. Kessler stopped. That's what you said on the phone. Ethan hadn't moved from his table. You said 11 years, not 11 months, 11 years. I don't recall that. No, you do, Ethan said. You've been thinking about it every day since. That's why you're standing in this restaurant instead of sitting in your car. Because you said a number out loud to a stranger and you've been sick about it for a month and you had to come find out how much I know. Kessler's hands were still in his pockets. You have nothing, he said quietly. I have Ray Delgado's notebook. That's a barber with a grudge. I have Mrs. Kim's shoebox, 11 months, in her own hand, dated and initialed. That's a shoebox. I have Gus Vandermeer's bank withdrawals. Ethan stood up. I have Ruben Alvarez in the second booth who drove 19 hours from Yuma. Kessler turned his head. And Ruben Alvarez stood up out of booth 2, and Captain Robert Kessler saw a man he had personally erased from the earth 2 years ago, standing in a restaurant with his arms at his sides. Hey, Captain, Ruben said. His voice was in pieces. You remember me, Alvarez Landscaping? My dad's name was on the truck. Kessler said nothing. You closed my case in 6 days, Ruben said. 6 days. I got the paper. I kept it. It's got your initials in the box at the bottom right there next to unfounded, and I have looked at those initials for 2 years and I never knew what they meant. His voice broke completely. I didn't know it was a person. I thought it was a system. I thought it was just how it is. Sir, Kessler said, I close 400 cases a year. 22, Ethan said. Kessler's eyes came back to him. 22 complaints, 4 zip codes, 15 different responding officers over 11 years, so no pattern ever lands on any one badge. Ethan's voice was very quiet. Every single one closed unfounded inside 72 hours. Every single one signed off in one office. Yours. You can't prove... I don't have to, Ethan said. You just walked in here. And Robert Kessler finally understood. Ethan watched it happen. Watched 31 years arrive all at once in a restaurant. The room, the phones, the silence, the fact that not one person had run. The fact that the man he'd tried to buy at 1 a.m. was standing there with his hands empty and no fear on him at all. Where's Marsh? Kessler said. He's in the car, Ethan said. Captain, he's been in the car the whole time. Robert Kessler's hand came out of his pocket. What happened next took 2 seconds, and 140 people had it on video from 140 angles, and the FBI would eventually stitch 9 of them together for a jury. Kessler came at him. Not with a weapon that was the thing that was what everybody said afterward. He didn't reach for his sidearm. He came with his hands, 31 years, and a plaque on the wall, and he came across a restaurant floor at a man with his hands out like a bar fight, because in the end, that's all it had ever been. Ethan didn't step back. He stepped in. Left hand caught the wrist, turned it, took the weight pivoted, and put Captain Robert Kessler face down across a table with one arm folded up behind him, and he did it in complete silence, and he did not hit him, and he did not say one word. The room made no sound at all. Captain, Ethan said, very quietly, right by the man's ear, and Dante Willis's phone caught this too, and it would be the clip that ran on every network in America for 4 straight days. Look at the room. Get off me. Look at the room. And Robert Kessler, face down on a table in Reyes family kitchen, opened his eyes. 140 phones. Ray Delgado, Mrs. Kim, Gus Vandermeer, Hector Reyes, Ruben Alvarez, an old man in a VFW cap standing up straight for the first time in 11 months. Every one of them looking right at him. That's it, Ethan said. That's the whole thing. That's all it ever took. The doors came in at 8:51. Federal agents. A lot of them moving fast and yelling, and Dana Okafor came through the middle of it and stopped 6 feet away, and looked down at a police captain folded over a table by a man in a canvas jacket. "Sir," Ethan said, "he's yours." Okafor didn't move for a second. Then she said, "Robert Kessler, you're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, wire fraud, and deprivation of rights under color of law." And her voice cracked on the last 4 words, and nobody in that room held it against her. They took Marcus Deal out of a car in the parking lot. They took Sergeant Daniel Vance out of the same car, and he was crying, and he asked 4 different agents what was going to happen to his pension. And Wesley Marsh sat on the curb with a wire taped to his chest and his head in his hands, and when Okafor walked past him, he said, "Dana." And she stopped, and he said, "I'm sorry." And she said, "I know Wes," and kept walking, because that's what you do, and because it was 8:54, and there was nothing else to say. The indictment came down 11 days later, and it was 206 pages. Robert Kessler, 31 years commander of the 4th District, was charged with running a protection racket out of a police station for 11 years. Not 11 months. 11 years, 4 zip codes, an estimated $2.4 million, and 181 separate victims, of whom the FBI eventually located 139. Every single one of them had reported it. That was the number that broke the country's heart. Not the money. When the Post ran it on a Sunday, the headline was about the money, but the paragraph that got shared 4 million times was the one buried on page 6, that of the 139 victims. The FBI found 122 had filed a complaint at some point. They'd all done it. Every one of them alone once at the beginning before they learned. Marcus Deal took 11 years. He gave up everybody he'd ever collected for including 2 Marcuses that came before him. Daniel Vance took 9. He never got his pension. Wesley Marsh took 18 months and testified for 3 days. And on the 2nd day, the defense attorney asked him why he did it. Why a decorated detective with 2 kids helped a man like Kessler for a decade. And Marsh sat in that chair and said, "Because in 2016, he fixed a charge for my wife's brother, and I said thank you." And the lawyer said, "That's it." And Marsh said, "That's it. That's how much it costs. Nobody tells you the price up front, sir. They just let you owe." Robert Kessler went to trial. Of course he did. He had a plaque on his wall. He got 24 years. And on the 4th day of that trial, the government called Hector Reyes, who was 62 by then, and the prosecutor asked him to describe the 15th of every month for 11 months. And Hector did in a courtroom in front of the man's family and his own daughter and 12 strangers, and he got about 4 minutes in and had to stop. And the judge said, "Take your time, Mr. Reyes." And Hector Reyes looked up and said, "No, sir, I've taken enough." They called Mrs. Kim, who read her own handwriting out loud in Korean through an interpreter, 11 months of it, every date, every amount. And when she was done, she looked directly at Robert Kessler and said one sentence that the interpreter had to say twice, because the first time nobody could hear it. "I wrote it all down," she said, "because I always believed somebody would come and ask." They called Ray Delgado, 71, in his funeral suit. They called Ruben Alvarez, who drove 19 hours again. They called Olivia Reyes, who had photographs from an urgent care dated and time-stamped from a Tuesday morning at 11:40 a.m. And they called Ethan Carter, and he was on the stand for 2 hours and 11 minutes, and he was the most boring witness of the entire trial. He answered every question in about 6 words. He never raised his voice. When the defense attorney tried the thing everybody knew he was going to try, "Mr. Carter, isn't it true? You're a trained military security specialist? Isn't it true you sought this out? Isn't it true you enjoy this?" Ethan said, "No, sir. No, sir. I sat in my truck in that parking lot for 20 minutes trying to leave." "And why didn't you?" Ethan Carter sat in a federal courtroom and thought about a woman on Route 32 in 2019 and 14 sentences about copper wire and 6 years of a rule he'd made at a grave. "Because I already knew what it cost to walk away," he said. "I've been paying it since 2019. I wasn't going to make anybody else pay it too." The neighborhood came back slow. That's the part they didn't put on the news because there's nothing to film. It came back in a way you could only see if you'd been there before. Ray Delgado's shop stayed open past 6 for the first time in 4 years. The flower shop on 5th reopened in March under a woman named Denise Alvarez, who was Ruben's cousin, and Ruben came out from Yuma to help her build the counters, and stayed 3 weeks and cried when he left. Gus Vandermeer hired 2 kids. Mrs. Kim raised her prices 40 cents and apologized to every customer for a month, and nobody cared. And Reyes' family kitchen was full every single day, which drove Hector out of his mind, because he had not staffed for it, and he was 62, and he kept running out of eggs. Olivia found Ethan in the corner booth on a Saturday in April. Coffee. Newspaper he wasn't reading. Same booth. He'd never once sat anywhere else. "You know we're never charging you for coffee again," she said. "You have to. It's a business." "Mr. Carter." "Ma'am, if you comp my coffee, I stop coming." He looked up at her. "I mean that." She sat down across from him, which she'd never done. "I want to say thank you," she said. "I've been trying to say it for 6 months, and every time I open my mouth, it comes out stupid, so I'm just going to say the stupid version. Thank you for saving my life." And Ethan Carter shook his head. "I didn't. You literally—" "Ms. Reyes." He set the cup down. "I got him off you. That's 4 seconds. That's all that was." He leaned forward. "You want to know when you got saved? You got saved the day you walked 6 blocks in a hood and put a piece of paper on my porch rail after I told you to go home. You got saved when your dad asked a police sergeant for a warrant in his own dining room with 140 people watching. Mrs. Kim saved herself 11 months before I ever walked in here. She just didn't know it yet, because nobody had asked." Olivia's eyes filled up. "I didn't save you," Ethan said. "I asked. That's the only thing I ever did that mattered. I'm the guy who finally asked." He picked up his coffee. "The moment everybody stopped being afraid," he said, "that's when you saved yourselves." He walked home from the restaurant that afternoon, which he'd started doing because it was 4 blocks, and because Maddie liked to meet him halfway. She was on the corner of 5th and Warren with her backpack on one shoulder. 12, now taller by 2 inches, since October, and she fell into step beside him and started talking before he was all the way there. "Okay, so Dad, Priya's mom asked if you could look at their garage door again, and I said yes because I'm building my brand, and also there's a thing at school where you have to bring a parent and talk about their job, and I told Miss Cortez you install keypads, and she made a face. Dad, she made a face at me." "What kind of face?" "The kind where a teacher knows something." Maddie squinted up at him. "Everybody at that school knows you know. Everybody. Denise from the front office cried at me, in the hallway, about you. Denise is a good woman." "Dad." She bumped his arm with her shoulder. "Are you ever going to tell me the actual whole thing, like all of it?" Ethan walked another half block. "Yeah," he said. "When you're older." "That's what you always say?" "I know." "You said that about Mom." "I know." He stopped on the sidewalk. Then he crouched down a little, which he could barely do anymore because she was almost as tall as his shoulder now. "Mads, listen. I'm going to tell you the one part that matters, and then we're going to go home and make spaghetti." "Okay. You told me not to come in second." Maddie's face did something complicated. "I was mad," she said. "You were right." Ethan looked at his daughter. "I spent 6 years being scared, and I called it being careful, and I taught you that. And a whole neighborhood spent 11 years being scared and calling it being smart. And the only thing, Maddie, the only thing that ever broke it, was that a bunch of ordinary, terrified people found out they weren't the only one. That's it. That's it," Ethan said. "That's the whole secret. It's not being brave. Nobody in that restaurant was brave." Ray Delgado's hands were shaking so hard he couldn't hold his phone straight. "So what was it?" Ethan stood up and took his daughter's hand, which she let him do on a public sidewalk at 12, which he understood was a gift, and did not mention. "They just stopped being alone," he said, "and they walked home. Evil doesn't win because it's strong. It never has been. Evil wins for exactly one reason, and it's the same reason every single time in every town on every block. It convinces good people that they are the only one. Hector Reyes wrote it down. Mrs. Kim wrote it down. Ray Delgado wrote it down. Ruben Alvarez wrote it down and carried it to Arizona and put it in a drawer under a tape measure. 122 people out of 139 had already done everything right alone in the dark for years, and every one of them thought they were the only one who ever had. They weren't. They never were. Nobody ever is. One man standing up in a restaurant did not defeat a criminal empire. 4 seconds of violence didn't do it, and a federal indictment didn't do it, and 24 years in a cell didn't do it either. What did it was 140 people